Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Khurram Shehzad. Today we are going to talk about the concept of identity. I would like that we can understand and we can identify identity in written and spoken discourse. Moreover, we need to understand the concept of identity online. A person may have a number of identities. One of the identities of a female is of a woman, but she may be a worker as well. At home, she may be a mother. And so far as I am concerned, my identity in the office, in the university, is of a professor. My identity at home is different. I may be a brother. My identity, it keeps on changing. So our identities are never fixed. They keep on changing. There are different variations which are involved. For example, class, for example, age, for example, gender. Okay? And since we are living in the post-structural world, so identity of a person is never fixed. It is fluid. Okay? So it also depends on the context, that how we manage our identity, how we pose our identity, how we want to display ourselves in front of others, what is our relationship with others, and how we are interacting with others, how we are managing our identity with them, the kind of language that we are using, all depends on the context. For example, the information a person gives off about himself or herself in turn display his or her identity, and it depends on the context, occasion and the purpose of the discourse. So it also depends on the space and place of the interaction. Identity is never fixed, as I have just told you. So you may find a person in doing some TV show or a drama that he or she adopts the identity of a beggar, he or she adopts the identity of a husband or of a mother. So identity is never fixed. Then, for example, as I have just told you, that it depends on the place and the space. So wherever we are born, our identity is determined. Okay? When a child comes into this world, we give him or her a name. When you give him or her, give him a name of a Muhammad, like Muhammad Irfan, so we come to know the identity of a person, that he is a Muslim. He is born in a Muslim family. Same is the case, sometimes, the kind of cap that people wear. Green color shows the affiliation of a person, that where he belongs to, what is his sect. White color shows again the identity of a person. When he wears a white cap on his head, we come to know that what is his or his sect. Same is the case with black color. And even sometimes people display a flag. They, host a flag on the top of their house. And in this way we come to know the identity of a person. So identity is determined with from language as well. Sometimes people, they identify a person, that how he or she is speaking, the kind of pronunciation, the kind of formal or informal language that people, they use when they are interacting with others. So we determine the identity of a person. Okay, same is the case so far as online identity is concerned. People use different names. People, sometimes they use the name of actors and actresses, sometimes the pictures of actor or actresses on their Facebook accounts, on their Twitter accounts, and this is how they want that people should identify them. Some people, they use Muslim posts. They post that something which is related to religion, and this is how they show their identity. They display their identity on Facebook. And sometimes We affiliate ourselves with different kinds of groups, and this is how we determine the identity of a person. But that is the identity which is online, because this is what we see, this is what we see or hear from them on their posts. So there are different kinds of identities that we need to understand. So far as movies or dramas are concerned, for example, Brian Poltridge talks about one of the movies, that is Sex and the City, okay, and he shows different characters, that how they are displaying their identities. Now, if we remember Aggins and Slade, they say that despite its sometimes aimless appearance and apparently trivial content, casual conversation is in fact a highly structured, functionally motivated semantic activity motivated by interpersonal needs, continually to establish who we are, how we relate to others, and how we think of the world. Is casual conversation a critical linguistic site for the negotiation of such important dimensions of our social identity? For example, in the drama Janjalpura, we see that how transgenders, their identity is socially constructed. You will find them most of the time in our movies and dramas, that they are represented, that they are dancing or they are begging. So this is how we identify them, which is not a very good way to represent them. Then the identity of religious scholars. For example, in the movie Bowl, we can find that there is a person who is a religious scholar. He has got a number of daughters, okay, and he keeps on producing more and more daughters because he wants to have a son. And once he gets a transgender, okay, that how he is maltreated and how his identity is created on in the movie, that is Bowl. Then we can see that identity in the written discourse also plays a very important role. For example, Highland says that we should ask our students, when they are writing academic discourse, it should be impersonal. Students should leave their personalities at the door. It means that they should write in such a way that they should not be using personal pronouns like I. And this is what we emphasize, okay, in our academic culture here in Pakistan. Many of the research papers or research theses that we come across, we find that our students, they are writing the researcher. But when I was in America, I observed that people there were using I instead of the researcher. And now again, here even in Pakistan, people ask their students that they should display their identity in their writing. They should use the pronoun I when they are producing their research articles or theses. There are certain other things that one can focus on to find out the identity of writers in the written discourse. For example, it is also called discourseal self. There are always a range of alternatives writers can choose from in order to represent themselves in a text, their relationship with their readers, and their relationship to the knowledge they are discussing. This can be through the use of stance features such as self mentions, I, we, my, hedges like might, perhaps, boosters like definitely, in fact, and attitude markers such as unfortunately and surprisingly. All these words, they express the attitude of a person or of a writer towards a proposition that he or she is presenting in written discourse. Writers can also draw on engagement strategies such as reader pronouns, personal asides, appeals to shared knowledge, directives, and questions. For example, Hedges, I can read some sentences to point out that how one can find the stance of a person. Our results suggest that rapid freeze and thaw rates during artificial experiments in the laboratory may cause artificial formation of embolism. May cause. So here the writer is using the word may and is showing that he or she is not confident about the kind of results, the kind of data, the kind of proposition or statements that he or she is making. Otherwise, the author would have used causes. But the author did not use the word causes, he or she used may cause. Then boosters, with a few interesting exceptions, we obviously do not see. Here he is using the word obviously. Do not see a static image as moving. This seems highly dubious. Something is already dubious, but he is saying highly dubious. He or she is using the word highly, which is a booster. Then attitude markers. The first clue of this emerged when we noticed a quite extraordinary result. A quite extraordinary result is showing the attitude marker, attitude of the author towards the written discourse that he or she is producing. Then self-mention. This experience contains ideas derived from reading I have done. Now you have done this reading and you are telling us that you are deriving certain ideas, certain conclusions. So self-mention is another stance that the author is making. Then there are engagement markers like reader pronouns. For example, although we lack knowledge about a definitive biological function, although we lack knowledge, we. So by saying we, he is including himself or herself as well as the readers. Personal asides. And as I believe my TESOL professionals will readily acknowledge, as I believe all this clause is aside because the sentence is and critical thinking has now begun to make its mark. Then appeal to share knowledge. Of course we know that. If we already know, then why are you telling us? But this is how the authors, they engage with us in their written discourse. They may give us directives like it is important to note that, or they may ask us questions. Is it in fact necessary to choose between nature and nurture? Is it in fact necessary to choose? So such type of stance features or engagement markers authors they use when they are producing their written discourse. Now I would love to summarize what we have talked about. I have talked about discourse and identity. I have said that identity is never fixed. It keeps on changing. It is fluid and our identity changes as soon as time or place or occasion changes. My identity in the university is different. My identity at home is different. Your identity in this university is of a student. At home it may be of a brother or a sister. So our identities are never fixed. They keep on changing. Then our dress, our language, our pronunciation, formal and informal words, all these things determine our identity. That what kind of language you are using, what kind of words you are using, what is the situation, what is the person you are interacting with, how you are interacting with that person. Okay, all these things will determine your identity. Your name, for example, Muhammad or Suleiman or Afzal or Mehmuna, all these they determine your identity. Where are you from? Words like George. Okay, so we come to know that we are talking about some non-Muslim. So our dresses, they also help identify our identity. Then I gave you the example of a cap. We in Pakistani culture, we know that who wears black cap, who wears, green pagdi cap or white pagdi or cap. And we understand their, sect. Then same is the case that how people, they use different kinds of flags on the top of their houses. And we identify that what is their identity. Then how identity is socially constructed in television. So I gave you the example of some dramas like Janjalpura and the movie like Bol and the movie like Sex and the City. And then again different characters, how they are interacting with other characters. and they are displaying their identity. So it is never fixed. When the situation changes in all these dramas, scenes, or movies, the identity of the person changes. So we have talked about written identity in written discourse, in spoken discourse, and online identity. People make fake accounts, They have fake names on Facebook like Baba ki Gudiya Baba ki, Princess, Happy Princess, or Happy Prince, or Doll. All these are fake identities that people create online. So we need to understand the concept of identity, that it is never fixed, it is socially constructed. People, they determine, they display their identity, keeping in mind the kind of relationship that they are having and the kind of situation they are in. Thank you very much.